watch an ad in my own life.
Good for you.
Hey, we're
Oh,
live.
there it
Awesome.
is.
Let me just mute this, make sure we're not getting an echo. And how bad is the lag on the video? Oh, I paused it.
All right, hopefully we're good.
Let me just catch it back up to here. So how bad's the lag?
I think we're probably okay.
Yeah, it's not too bad. All right, we'll figure it out. So, welcome to the live stream with Traffish Aquatics and Tim from Ian's Fish Room. So I don't know what you wanted to talk about today, or
Well, I had a couple different things, but I want to introduce myself a little bit first, and
Yeah,
then
go
I've
ahead.
got some questions for you that I thought, your viewers might appreciate.
Sure.
Your channel's grown a lot over the last several years, and so I've been following it since I think you had 300 subs. But I'm sure a
Yeah.
lot of them haven't, so they
Yeah.
probably missed a lot of stuff there. So I had some questions for you I thought might be fun to go through.
All right.
But I'm Tim, like Travis said, from Ian's Fish Room. It's a fish channel that I do with my son. He's 10 years old. He may come into the room at some point. We'll see. But we do a lot of videos on just kind of all kinds of topics, whether it's from aquascaping and plant, profiles to how to do some things. And so if you guys are interested, you can check that out. But mostly I wanted to come out here and just kind of hang out with you today and ask you some questions about...
Yeah, that's cool. I like hanging out.
Yeah, we could talk fish all day. We might as well get these guys to join us.
Right.
If you guys do have any questions for Travis or myself, make sure you hit them up in the chat. We'll be trying to keep up with that as well, and hopefully we don't miss anything. But let me pull out because I wrote them down. I don't want to forget them.
Oh, okay.
I thought they were good ones, but my memory's not great. So, all right. So my first question was: I know we talked a little bit about this before, but how long have you been keeping fish, and what was your first tank setup?
So I've been keeping fish since I was probably 8 years old. So that would be 22 years now. And the first tank setup that I had was gifted to, I believe it was actually gifted to my brother. It wasn't even to me. And it was a little 1.5 gallon half moon aquarium. And I think we had like 5 neon tetras in it. It didn't have a heater in it. There was no life plants. But it had a scape that was set up of a little shipwreck and a submarine, and there was a little scuba diver down there crawling around the wreckage, and it looked cool. We thought it was awesome. I was 8 years old, he was 5 years old. It was the coolest thing we've had, ever. So we had that tank, and I don't know who did it, but the one day I came in and the tank was just bombed with fish food. It was like a big rainbow of colors everywhere, and everything ended up dying. So I never really had like an onward outset for fish at that point. I was just like, oh, the fish are gone, So it was probably a couple months later, one of my mom's friends had a 10-gallon aquarium with some Convict Cichlids in it, and she gave that to me because she didn't want it anymore, and I had those fish for years. And I was never really like, oh, I'm going to do all this crazy stuff to this 10-gallon tank with these Convict Cichlids in it. They were just kind of there. And slowly they ended up dying off. And actually, I had met my wife, who we weren't married at the time, obviously, because we were like 14. She came over and she's like, oh, you got a fish tank? That's really cool. And she was checking it out, and she's like, do you have any fish in there? And I'm like, honestly, I have no idea. And she looked in it, and she's like, oh, there is a fish in there. And I was like, oh, really? And then, she had interest in it, so I was like, well, I better clean that thing. So I cleaned that tank up, and I grew that convict out. She was like, I don't know, she was like 5-6 inches when she was full grown, and she kept like swimming up to the front of the tank, scraping her teeth on the glass, and she ended up destroying the tank. So it was pretty much at that point forward, I was kind of hooked on fish, and I've had fish tanks ever since.
Do you think your wife regrets at all that she took interest in that one fish?
I don't know. She's
kind
in
of.
the.
Yeah,
Remember I was talking about the neon tetras?
Oh yeah, there's something like this neon. Travis told us
Yeah.
earlier that you didn't like those neon tetras.
Yeah, she doesn't
So
like them.
I don't
know
understand it because I think they're fantastic. But then I guess the question would be to your wife, really, But we'll let her answer in the chat. Oh, good. She
why.
said
Yeah,
not
she
at
doesn't
all.
regret it. That's good.
Yeah, it's good because you got a lot of tanks. And how many gallons of water do you have in your house right now for
Oh,
fish
I
tanks?
figured this out. When I had 30 tanks set up, I had almost, I think it was like 15 or 1600 gallons But I could figure it out real quick right now because you got 150 and 300, that's 450, 75 is 525, and 110 is 630. There's 20 gallons there, 650, 125 out there, 7. You got 120 in the kitchen, it's 800. Probably about 1,000 gallons right now.
All right, so 1,000 gallons. That's still
that's still a lot of water.
quite a bit of water sitting in your house.
Mm-hmm.
And I can appreciate that. I don't have nearly that many in my house, but yeah, like Travis mentioned earlier, you used to have 30 fish tanks set up, and he kind of actually cut back quite a few. You might have gotten.
Yeah, I'm down.
You might have seen a video before that we did of removing some of those.
Yeah.
When I just set up that 125 there.
Yeah, there was 5 tanks on this wall right here behind us. There was 2 55 gallons, 20 long, 15 gallon, and a 20 high. And then over there was 2 55s and 2 20 highs. And they all got taken down. All those stands are put away. The tanks are all in the garage for future use. And yeah, we basically eliminated that to get the 300 gallon in here, and put a couch in here so we can actually sit in here and enjoy it, you know, instead of just having to stand in here.
So since you've rearranged all these things, you haven't done a fish room tour.
No.
So if you guys are interested in that, I'm actually going to be posting. One of the reasons I came out here today is I wanted to do a video of all of Travis's setup. I've been here several times. I love his tanks. So we're going to be doing a video for you. It's going to come out Friday. Basically a tour of his fish tanks currently. So if you are interested, make sure you check that out, coming out on Friday. But yeah, I absolutely love your tanks. They're, you know, we were looking through even today, and I said, you know, one of the things I love about your tanks is they're not like a highly aquascaped setup.
No.
You have a very natural looking setup in your fish tanks, and one that I think a lot of people wish that they could copy because it just looks very, very natural. It's really nice to be able to sit in here and look at.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I always looked at whenever I set a tank up. Like, I don't want it like blooming with plants. Like you going out and you see the aquascaping competitions and some of Tim's tanks, and they're blooming up real nice, and they're just like, wow, that looks amazing. But I don't know. In my opinion, you would never find that in reality in the wild. And if you do, it's going to be super rare. So basically, the way I look at aquariums and the way I always want to set them up is I want to set it up the way that if I went out and stuck my head under the water and was able to pick up a section of lake bed and just put it in an aquarium, that's kind of what I want it to look like, and that's how I want it to expect it to be. And that's kind of how I set them up, is there's no real rhyme or reason because nature doesn't have a rhyme or reason to the way they have things set up. It's just kind of there, and that's just how it is, right? So there's no human involvement.
Yeah.
And that's one of the other reasons, like my 150 gallon I set up, that is a Pennsylvania native aquarium. It's got fish from Pennsylvania in there. All the driftwood is from Pennsylvania, so it's native trees that created the driftwood. The stones are from Pennsylvania, they're outside. Everything's from here. And I feel like if I went out in a lake bed and looked at that tank, I'd be able to pick that up and put it in that fish tank, and that's how it would look in the wild. And that's the whole reason I did that. And I also included the empty beer bottles and the bobber because that's stuff that you're going to find in the wild too.
Oh yeah, especially in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's the human interaction with nature is nobody is ever perfect and people are going to leave stuff behind. So that's why I put that stuff in there just as like a touch, you know, just to be like, this is nature.
Yeah.
You know, it's unfortunate, but that's the way it is.
No, they look awesome though, and it does. It captures that. I'm outside and I'm out in nature, and this is how they look. So
yeah.
I definitely think it looks really good.
Camera's struggling to focus.
Yeah, I don't know. We were struggling getting live, and so I don't know if we're going to be able to adjust that today. Maybe try not to talk with your hands so much. Maybe that's catching your hand movements. I don't know. But so Mariah asked how I kind of got started with some of my fish, and so I guess I'll answer that real quick. For me, I kind of started as a disaster, similar to you, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the way most fish keepers start. Is we get into this hobby and we have no idea what we're doing, and I saw somebody with a fish bowl and a fish, and that looked cool, so now I want a fish tank myself. And so the first fish I actually had was some type of sunfish. I don't even remember, that we caught in the pond, and I put it in a 10-gallon tank, and then I thought, man, I feel like that fish wants some friends. And so, I thought it was bored all by itself. And so I went to the pet store and I looked at some fish. I thought that one looks cool and that one looks cool and that one looks cool. And next thing I know, I had like 10 fish in my 10-gallon fish tank that I'm sure did not go together at all. My tank wasn't cycled right, and it ended up being a complete disaster. And I look back at that and think, yeah, I wish I would have done a little more research. Wish I would have been paying attention to what I was doing. I would have been a little more successful. But what really kept me in the hobby was when I was looking at all those fish, I thought, man, I got to feed these guys. I decided that I was going to try to figure out a way to feed them on the cheap, but I wanted to make sure they were having good food. So I actually started looking to, well, what fish can I breed really easily that I can feed? And of course, I came up with guppies. And if you guys have seen my channel, I'm still breeding guppies. I still love guppies. But one of the things for me was I started looking and researching about guppies. And I was like, oh, look at this. They can have babies every 28 days. That would be perfect to feed my fish. Now, I don't even remember what I had in that other fish tank anymore because it was a disaster.
Yeah.
And I don't know if any of them even would have eaten the fish anyways because I failed miserably for the first couple months trying to do that. And by the time I got guppies breeding for the first time, most of those fish had unfortunately died because I just had no idea what I was doing. So that was my first foray into fish keeping, and it was a disaster. We didn't have things like YouTube where or even Facebook groups. You had to go on forums to learn things, and so there wasn't as much information readily available at that time. And so hopefully, hopefully that doesn't happen to as many people anymore. That they run into a disaster. I'm sure they do to some extent, but hopefully it's getting better.
And that's one of the things. Like when we're a little bit older, right, than most of the people that are getting into the hobby now, right? Most people get into the hobby when they're like 10 to 15, in that range, and we didn't have the internet when we first started fish keeping. It was just kind of like we figured it out on our own, and it was every man for himself.
Yeah.
You go to the fish store and it's like they give you bad information, and you just kind of follow it because they're the expert.
Better than you know. Yeah.
So, and now we have the wondrous ways of the internet and all the Facebook groups with fish and all the internet forums and YouTube. Right, that's a great place to learn stuff. So,
it's a great place to also learn some really bad stuff too.
Yes, but so you got to make sure you're following people who actually know what they're talking about, and not people that are like shock YouTubers. I'm not going to name any names, but there's a lot of people out there that just do stuff to get views, and they're not out there for the betterment of the hobby or the betterment of the fish. So you got to pick and choose who you follow and what you watch and what you decide to learn. And do your own research. Your own research is key. If it doesn't make sense to you and you don't understand why, it probably isn't the right thing to be doing. So there's always that. So, but it's a lot easier to find the information now. It's a lot easier to reach out and ask for help, and get responses very, very fast. So, but yeah.
All right, I have another. Ian, did you want to come in and say hello real quick?
Oh.
Yeah.
All right, well, come in. You can say hello.
Yeah, camera's right there.
Hi.
So that's my son Ian. Like I said, he does a lot of the fish, a lot of the different videos that we do. He's part of. When he's available, he's a busy guy too. So you're not that busy. You're just usually busy playing video games, that kind of thing.
With my friends.
With your
Exactly.
friends. Yeah.
All right.
Important, too.
So my next question, Travis, and again, for anybody who's been watching your channels, they've probably seen a few of these.
Mhm.
But in your opinion, what's the biggest disaster that you've had with fish keeping?
The biggest disaster that I've had with fish keeping was probably having the 150-gallon blow the bottom seal that one time. And I got this 150-gallon tank. It was free. It was an early 80s model, which if you know anything about older tanks, they were built with thicker glass and no cross bracing. And the thicker glass was basically there to accommodate the bowing of the aquarium. And they do the same thing now. If you get a rimless tank or a frameless tank, they use thicker glass to accommodate the water weight so that you don't get as much deflection in the glass. And this tank was set up that way. I had to reseal it because the guy I got it from said it was leaking. And so I did a full reseal on it. I let it sit for 2 weeks to cure because it was a big tank. There was a good amount of silicone on it. And I got everything set up. The water was in it for almost a month. And it was actually on my birthday 2 years ago, I think. One of my friends was over. We were playing games in the kitchen, and I come out here, and I was actually going to the bathroom, and I heard water splashing, and it kind of sounded like the output on a canister filter was splashing a little bit, like, you know, you lose water from evaporation. I kind of thought it was that, but I had just done water changes like 2 days ago. So I was like, huh, that's weird. So I turned the light on, and that's when I realized there was about 50 gallons of water missing out of the tank. And their
Ouch.
floor was dry in front of the tank and on the side. So I was like, where's it going? And I crawled under the tank, and it was leaking out of the back. So what had happened was there was so much deflection in the glass that even with the new silicone, it ripped it.
Oh,
So,
man.
and there was another person that I had talked to that had this exact same aquarium, and they said, dude, I'm telling you, do not use it. Those 150 gallons have had nothing but issues. They always blow seams. It doesn't matter if you rebuild it or not, it's going to fail. And that's why they ended up changing the design of it. And I should have listened to them, but I didn't. I thought I knew, you know, I know what I'm doing, I'll be good. And I was wrong. And I'll admit I was wrong.
And paid the price?
And I paid the price for it. I had about 70 gallons of water on the floor. I had to move a bunch of fish around. And then I was out of tank for probably 3 months. And then I think, was it you that actually sent me the link?
Yeah, I
for
sent you a
this?
link to that free.
Yeah, somebody else had a free 150 gallon, and I ran out and got it. He sent me the link, and I was up there in 20 minutes grabbing that thing and throwing it in here.
Yeah.
And I got the 150 back. But that, I was so worried about with how much water went on the floor that there was going to be structural damage and mold growing all over the place. But luckily for me, I built this floor, so I know what's under it. And it's a concrete floor, and there's actually cracks in it that lead outside. So the water actually got into that concrete and drained out of the
Just
house.
drained out.
So
That's crazy.
if I didn't have that, there would have been so many more problems. And yeah, but I got lucky. Is basically with everything that happened, I got lucky. But aside from that, just the basic, I oopsed and overfilled some tanks. You know,
Well,
we were talking about that earlier. I did one today, actually. I overfilled one of my 10 gallons and flooded my kitchen because I got distracted.
Did your wife know that before you just told her?
Well, she was out there.
Oh,
too,
okay. So
yeah.
she knew that on her.
Yeah, she knew
Well, I figured it was either going to be that, because I remember when that happened, and you're doing the quick video of it,
Yeah.
or the day that you broke the bottom of your 300
Oh,
gallon.
man, you know that.
Because yeah, we're looking at, and we're pointing here because
Yeah, I forgot
Travis's
about that.
300 gallon is right here, his 150 is right over here, and yeah, both those tanks have been disaster for
Yeah,
us. So
yeah. You know, I actually completely forgot about that 300. I'll talk about that a little bit because you're right. That is a pretty big one too. I was so disappointed. So, I was down at my local fish store and I was talking to the owner, and he was telling me, he's like, "Hey, do you know anybody who wants a free aquarium?" And I was like, that was in the time where I was getting all my tanks and everything set up, and I was like, I want a free aquarium. So I'm like, how big is it? And he's like, it's 265 gallons. So in my head, I'm going, that's a perfect replacement for the 125 I have in the living room, because a 265 is 7 feet long. It's either 18 or 24 inches deep. So it's a good footprint. And I had goldfish out there at the time. So I was like, that's a perfect upgrade for them. I'll be able to keep it in my living room. You know, I'm like, I want it. Just let me know when I can go get it. And he was like, all right, I'll let you know, because the guy's taking it down right now because he just had a custom 730 gallon aquarium built and shipped to his house. So I was like, okay, so I get a free huge tank and then I get to see this massive aquarium. Like, I'm in,
Good
like,
times.
I want this.
Yeah.
So he told me when to meet him and where, so I met this guy and we went inside and he's like, yep, here's the tank. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, that's not a 265, that's a 300 Marine Lane double deep. And I'm like, I want that even more. So
So
just
it
the
started off as a
footprint-
good day, right?
Oh yeah, it was starting off amazing. And it had substrate in it with crushed coral, so you're gonna be able to buffer pH, you won't have to worry about anything. It was pre-drilled for a sump, like it had the canopy and everything, and I was like, I was sold. I was like, this is gonna be awesome, right? I didn't know where I was gonna put it, you know, but I had it, so
300
that's-
gallon doesn't
yeah,
matter
it
where
doesn't
you're
matter.
going
I'll
to put it.
figure
You'll
it
figure
out.
that out. Yeah.
So I had only brought a couple people with me. It was me, my wife, my buddy James, and her friend Mina. And I was looking everything up, and a 265 gallon aquarium weighs about 400 pounds, which is how much that old 150 gallon weighed. So me and James moved the 400 pound tank by ourselves. So I was like, oh, this won't be a big deal. We got 2 people and 2 people to help, so it'll take a little load off. Well, if you don't know anything about the 300 gallon, It's 6 foot wide and 3 feet front to back, and that bottom pane of glass is 3/4 of an inch thick. So it's 6 foot by 3 foot at 3/4. That tank weighs 550 pounds empty, and you got to carry it sideways, so all the weight is going to be on one side. So you have to try and balance it as you're carrying it on its side to get it through doorways and stuff. It was just a nightmare. But we ended up picking it up. We got it over to the guy's front door, which was maybe like 8 feet away, and it was going okay. But to get out the door, the people on the sides had to let go. So we only had, I was on one end, and James and Mariah were on the other end, and Mina was holding the side, and Mina had to let go so we could get it outside. Well, we got it outside, and I stepped down off of the guy's front step, and when it did, it pulled the tank my way a little bit, pulled the tank out of Mariah's hand because her hand hit the door jamb, and it flipped out of James's hand. The corner of the tank hit him in the head, and I ended up trying to catch it, which, bad idea. It's 500 pounds, twice as much as me, so like, I'm not stopping
You're
it.
not catching that.
So I ended up, we dropped it, right? And the guy has concrete front steps on his patio, and I'll never forget this, but the tank bounced. It actually landed flat and bounced. And when it came to a resting position, it was on the corner of the step, and it just poked through the bottom.
Oh man.
So like, I thought the tank was fine, and, until it blew the bottom out. So I felt bad because we dropped it, and the guy was like, oh, he's like, well, at least it was a free tank. So we cleaned up everything for him. It was our fault. We got glass everywhere. We cleaned everything up. I took the remnants of the tank, put it in the back of the truck, the stand that came with it, and I was just devastated. We ended up just driving home, and I left it in the truck for like 3 days, just because I didn't know what to do with it at that point. And that's when I came up with the idea for doing the epoxy plywood aquarium. So you replace the glass bottom with the plywood, and I did a whole video series on that, and the tank's up and running, and I'm happy I kept it instead of just pitching it.
Oh yeah. It's an awesome tank, and I kept bugging you about getting that video done. I couldn't wait to see this tank set up. And like I said, I'll be doing if you guys haven't seen that, you can come check out my video Friday because it is awesome. Or check out the ones Travis did on it because and I'll be honest, the video is not going to really give you a good idea of how awesome this tank is. When I came out here and I'm looking at it in person, it's bigger than you expect. It's got more depth to it. It is a really neat tank. But I remember when that happened, and I figured it was going to be one of those. Those two was going to be your biggest disaster. Yeah. I'll tell you what, I've been lucky, knock on wood, no major fish disasters for me yet. Hopefully I'll keep it that way. I don't want any. What's up, bud?
We do have one major fish disaster.
Well, Ian says we have one major fish disaster. What was that?
Our fish used to fall on the floor when we didn't have a lid to our top tank.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, we had some guppies that would jump out every once in a while.
And I'd step on one in the morning and it'd be like, what is that?
Yeah, and a dried out guppy. You're right about that. Yeah. That's a good point. All right, next question for you. So I hear your birds in the background.
Mm-hmm.
How many non-fish animals do you have as pets or as animals that you keep? Because I don't think a lot of your viewers know. I mean, you've done a few videos on some of them, but not all of them. So do you know how many animals you have? I'm sure you have to count them.
Yeah, I'm probably going to have to mentally count them here. And I'll probably forget something. So we've got, we had 2 parakeets. We actually just lost one a couple days ago. So we're down to 1 parakeet now. We have 2 dogs, Reuben and Harper. We have our cat, Cinder. We have a bearded dragon. I'm just kind of like going through the rooms now. And then I've got 9 chickens outside, 1 rooster and 8 hens. And I actually have 4 pecking ducks outside now too. And I think that's everything. If not, I'm sure Mariah will chime in. But I think that's everything.
Yeah.
So, quite a few.
Yeah, we don't have nearly that many animals at our house. We only have a cat and a crested gecko.
Yeah.
But, and neither one of them are mine. That's my wife's.
We have more.
What else do we have?
Sometimes we have crickets.
Oh, yes. Sometimes we have crickets. You're right about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That's all we have. That's, I think, all I have time for, too.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work, and keeping animals. And especially when you're keeping fish tanks and then you got other
Yeah.
animals besides.
It gets out of hand pretty quick.
Absolutely, absolutely. Which brings me to my next question for you. You have lots of fish and probably, I don't know, maybe 200 fish here in your house between all your tanks.
Probably.
Out of all of the fish that you have here, or maybe some fish you've had in the past, are there any that you regret buying?
That's a tough question.
While you're thinking about it, Mariah said you didn't forget anything, so it
Okay,
looks like
that's
you got
good. Yeah.
you got all the animals.
Yeah, I didn't forget about nothing. I don't know. I'm kind of torn because I love having tanks that have lots of fish in them. So like, it's kind of a double-bladed sword. So I like red devils and Midas cichlids. You know, medievals is basically what most of what people are going to get because of the inbreeding and the hybridization. But you can only keep one in a tank, and they need such a big tank that they take up a lot of room. Granted, the personality's there, the fish are just really nice to look at. They swim back and forth, so they take up all that room. But you need one big tank for one fish. So I mean, I like them a lot, but then there's also that. So that's kind of like one thing that kind of people don't really think about when they're starting to get into big fish like that, is that you need all this room for one fish. The other one is, now Convict Cichlids. They were kind of my first fish, so I'll always have a spot for them. But they're the same way. They're a small fish,
Yeah.
but they're so aggressive, especially when they have fry, that they'll just kill everything else in the tank just to protect the fry. So that's another one where it's like it's just one of those fish that you have it, and it's just.
And you used to have a lot of convicts. Do you even still have any convicts right now?
I do have two. They're
Okay.
actually back in the office where Mariah's working right now.
Okay.
There's a male and a female back there, and they actually have babies right now.
Yeah.
So they're probably like about an 1/8 inch long. There's probably like 50 of them.
But at least with convicts, you can keep them as a community too. Like,
Yeah.
if you have a convict, a community of convicts, it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, where some of these other cichlids, you know, you can't even do that with them. And
Yeah.
you know, you're right. It definitely takes up a lot of space. And yeah, I'm. You know, Ian was asking me earlier. You're looking at Travis's goldfish tank. He said, you know, oh, I want a goldfish, and they're cool. And they are neat fish. But what we were talking about is, if I have a goldfish tank, I want at least 3 goldfish, and that means I'm going to have a 75-gallon to keep them correctly. At least in my
just
opinion.
designated right too.
Just designate to him. And I kind of said to him, do you want to give up a 75-gallon fish tank for 3 fish? And his immediate response was no. You know, because we like to keep lots of different species and lots of community fish.
Yep.
And you know, I hopefully someday I'll have enough room and enough fish tanks that I can get away with it. But not until my my wife is okay with us having more fish tanks. I don't think. And I don't think it's coming anytime soon. So that's all right.
And that's one of the other things too. Is like, well, here's a question: what kind of future fish do you want to have? What's something that you're planning on in the future that you want?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, I've thought about. I would like a big cichlid someday. I've thought about flower horns, or you know, Jack Dempsey's, or you know, something that would be a one fish in a tank.
Yeah.
The problem is I think that's farther in the future for me because there's still so many fish that I want to keep. Ian's got his hand raised over here. Ian, did you have an idea of a fish you'd like to
For
keep? in the
my
future?
fish tank, I want a barb.
Barb?
Barb.
Yeah. We don't have any barbs in our fish room right now, and that was one of the fish we talked about keeping was some barbs. And so that may be something that we look at adding into Ian's tank. Right now he's got some rainbows in there that are growing out, and maybe once the rainbows get big enough, we'll look at adding some barbs. And I think they'll do okay together. You know, as long as the rainbows are big enough.
Yeah.
And we have enough barbs. You know, it's
Yeah.
definitely wouldn't want to do just 1 or 2 barbs in that tank.
Yeah, it
But-
depends what kind of barb too. Like if you want
Yeah.
tiger barbs, you're probably gonna want like 15 of them, because
Okay.
a lot of people recommend like, oh, keep 6, but with tiger barbs, 6 isn't really gonna cut it. You need at least 12 or 15 so they kind of keep the peace between themselves.
Dad, we need 12 or 15.
All right, 12 or
Because I
15.
want those.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and then you can get into like cherry barbs. Cherry barbs are relatively peaceful. They're not too bad. Golden barbs are pretty good too.
The ones we were looking at that you really seem to enjoy are some of those green tiger barbs.
Yeah.
But you're right. Yeah, I'd have to get enough of them to make it work. So, so that's Ian's. I don't know. For me, it's hard to say. There's so many. You know, I love some of the killifish. I haven't had a chance to get into a lot of killifish yet, but there definitely are a lot of those that I like. So yeah, it's you know, especially if you're keeping community fish, like there's so many different options to community fish. You coming over to say hello? And so yeah, we'll keep thinking about, because we do have some room in one of our community tanks to add some fish as those rainbows grow out and keep going. But yeah, I think the probably the harder, or you know, maybe part of the problem with the question is, you know, which fish don't I want to keep? You know?
Yeah, that's true.
Especially you go to a new pet store and you start looking around and you
like,
start looking, that's cool and that's cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
I do
And
the
they
same
realize
thing.
they can't go together.
right, that happens a lot where, oh, never mind, can't get those ones yet, or that kind of thing.
And that's
so.
one of the things that we were talking about earlier was I've got what was the beta rack in my kitchen, and it's 6 10-gallon tanks built up on a huge shelf, which if you've never seen it before, check out Tim's video on Friday. But I only have 2 bettas in there right now, and I'm trying to figure out what I want to do, because we're kind of getting away from the bettas, and we want to do smaller little community tanks, and we're probably going to do like species specific tanks in each one. So I'm trying to figure out what kinds of fish I want to put in there. So I already know that I want to do a 10-gallon Vallisneria tank. Tim gave me some Vallisneria, so it's kind of propagating itself out in there. And I want to do one 10-gallon tank with neon tetras, just because I think neon tetras in a Vallisneria tank just look amazing.
I think you'll convince your wife that it looks amazing too
Yeah,
when she sees
well,
that.
she's not going to get a choice in that one. So, sorry, babe. And then maybe like a tank of chili rasboras or a tank of ember tetras. Just a couple different things. Like if you guys have any ideas on something you'd like to see, go ahead and drop it down in the comment section and I'll check it out. And why this updated now?
No, well, that
I'll see if I can get it.
we're not seeing your chat right now.
Yeah, we'll get back to it. If you guys put any questions or anything, towards the end of the video, we're going to go through the whole chat and answer questions and kind of dig through that a little bit. But yeah, so like, I don't really have any future plans. There is one thing that I'm tossing back and forth on if I want to do, but it would require a little bit of moving stuff around. So the native tank would probably end up having to go. And then I would probably, eventually I want to try breeding my, the Red Devils, the Midas hybrids. So they would end up probably going in the 150 gallon. And then I would have a open 55 that I could do another tropical community in. And then my 75 long up there, I was actually thinking about maybe doing a Pea Puffer.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
That way I would have the ability to upgrade, because I do have a 125 gallon in my garage.
Yeah.
I could actually modify this stand, because it's already got the 150 on the bottom. I could easily modify it to put a 125 on the top. So I would have the ability to upgrade that quite easily. So I'm thinking about doing the Pea Puffer, just not sure when exactly I want to do it, but you know, eventually.
Oh, that would be. But we tried our hand at Pea Puffers for a little while, because
Yeah.
puffers are a cool fish. I remember you had some for a while too.
Yeah, I had 8 Pea Puffers for a while. The guy I got them from, he said he had raised them up and they were a couple years old already. And they were basically not too far off from what their life expectancy was.
Yeah.
So I got them, and they got live bloodworms every day. They took care of them, water changes almost every 3 days. They were super healthy. And then one by one, they just started slowly dying off just because of the age.
Yeah,
But,
we struggle with ours too,
yeah.
and a lot of times with those Pea Puffers, especially, just trying to get them cleaned out from parasites. You know, that can be a struggle. But the ones you had, yeah, they were. I'm sure.
They were all
they were old
well
enough to
over an
put down
inch,
now.
which is like maximum size for those guys is about an inch. They're all well over an inch. But yeah, they were perfectly healthy. They were old.
Yeah, I
They just
agree with
slowly died off.
Andy says a rummy nose tank would look cool.
Yeah, rummy
that
nose
would be
would look cool.
That would be a cool tank, absolutely.
Yeah, and I know my local fish store has those, so that's a good idea.
So, I appreciate your wife didn't know your plans. My wife never knows my plans for my fish
she
stuff
doesn't
either.
know until like the day of.
Yeah, sometimes the day after.
Yeah,
you know.
see, neon tetras, she doesn't like them.
Yeah, neon touches. You're gonna love them. They are awesome. You just have to have them set up right, and then you'll see. Actually, I saw somebody talking the other day on Facebook, and they mentioned how they don't like fish with teeth, and like, oh, fish with teeth, that's so gross. And I point out to them the fact that even neon tetras have teeth.
Yeah.
So
they're small, so small you can't see
Yeah,
them.
you just can't see them. And so we had discussion about how, all right, maybe it's not the teeth that she's bothered about, or she didn't like the idea of it.
Yeah.
It was seeing the teeth. So
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. But since you guys can't see the chat, Scott's Aquatics asked if we're going to Keystone Clash, which I think is a fabulous idea.
I'm going to Keystone Clash. I'm already signed up.
Ooh.
You could go for only $25 for what you have to pay for because you're a YouTuber and you get up signed early. Travis, what are you
I'll
waiting
probably
for?
go. Yeah. I'll go.
Yeah, it's going to be a great time.
Yeah, he mentioned it to me a couple weeks ago, and I was just like, oh yeah, I've just been so busy that I haven't had time, but I'll do it today before you leave.
All right, we'll get Travis out there. I'll be there. I think it's definitely worth the effort to go. You're probably gonna hang out at your aunt's house and hang out with your cousins like you did last time. Remember you went and stayed with your aunt? Because my family is right outside of Morgantown, Pennsylvania. That's where I grew up down there. So actually, my first job is where the Keystone Clash is. I take it back. My second job is in the same building the Keystone Clash is at.
Oh, really?
It's a hotel and a mall that are combined together. At least it used to be a mall back in the
Yeah.
90s. So I'll be there. I'm glad that we got interrupted with that question. It was a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, I did a couple other questions. Unless we have anything that needs to be answered there. This is a different kind of question, but since we're talking about it, kind of goes well with Keystone Clash. There's going to be a number of fish tubers there. Who is your favorite fish YouTuber to watch? You can't name yourself. That doesn't count.
Well, that makes it a lot harder. My favorite fish YouTuber. That's a hard question. If I had to pick one, I'd probably say Corey.
Yeah,
I like watching Corey. I always have liked watching his videos because very informative, teaches a lot of new people new things.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think a lot of people would agree with
Yeah.
that one. I mean, there's a reason he's the second biggest YouTube channel for fish keeping out there.
Yeah.
And he does a good job as far as educational pieces, but he's still entertaining. So I can understand that. I have a little bit of a different one. Now, if I want to learn some stuff, I think Corey's a great place to go.
Yeah, he's a good starting position.
Yes, absolutely. You know, for somebody who's just getting into the hobby, Corey is great. A lot of basic information and makes it very understandable, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I think I prefer actually watching some of the other YouTubers who are doing things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Like I really enjoy Lucas Bretz from LRB
Yep.
Aquatics. He does fish different than just about anybody, and I really enjoy his. And then the other one that I really enjoy is one that's just entertaining, and that's Simply Betta. Now she is not not necessarily your go-to to learn stuff. That's not what she's there for. But if you just want to be entertained, she has some great entertaining videos. So I'm sure you guys probably have a lot of different fish YouTube channels you watch. Usually when we get live streams and you go to any live stream, you'll see lots of people who are doing them. That's usually, people who are following lots of different YouTube channels.
Yeah.
But hopefully, I'm sure Travis is one of your favorites too. Now, if I'm looking to build stuff, I got to be honest, Travis. Like your channel is my favorite go-to for building stuff. And there's other guys who do stuff out there that talk about how to build stands and how to build tanks and how to do. But you are so good at going into a lot of the details and getting into the specifics. And the fact that, like, you just kind of, my 150 weighs this, and the 265 gallon weighs this. You've never even owned a 265 gallon, but you know that the 700 weight or the 300 weighs this much. I don't have the memory for that kind of stuff, and you do. And
I remember weird stuff.
Yeah.
So
but it's really helpful when you're doing your videos because you talk about like, oh, how much weight can this stand hold, and
Mhm.
you know, why can it hold that much, and how much the shear strength of these screws are. And so I think there's a lot of information there that you're able to give the details so that people feel a lot more confident in building
Yeah.
things.
And that's one of
Um,
the things, like when I first started making YouTube videos, it wasn't even originally to start like just, oh, this is what I'm doing and this I'm gonna teach you guys how to do this stuff. It was just a way for me to track my hobby so that I can look back and say a year ago, like, what was I doing a year ago? You know, because nobody really looks back and remembers like, oh, I had 5 guppies in this tank to start, and now I've got 1,000 guppies. You know,
Yeah.
you don't remember where you started from, and that was more or less where the YouTube channel started, and then it just started progressing into teaching because I was looking up videos to try and find ideas on how to do something, and the videos weren't giving me all the information I wanted.
Yeah.
Right, so I would have to watch 3 or 4 videos, then do digging in some forums and look up specs on 2x4s and different kinds of wood and specs on screws and what screws you should use. Should you use a number 8 deck screw or should you use a number 9 construction screw, or you know, just different things like that. Do you need to use wood glue or is it not really required?
Yeah.
You know, so so that's where I gather all that information and then I make my video and I try to provide all the information that people aren't thinking that they want, but stuff that you're going to end up looking up because it wasn't mentioned, you know.
Yeah, it's funny. I've even,
And-
you know, I've had people even ask like questions on Facebook groups and, oh, you know, how do you reseal a tank? And I'll send them both my video on how to reseal a tank, and I'll send them your video.
Yeah.
Now my video is probably like 7 minutes, 8 minutes long. Yours is like 30 minutes long, you know,
Yeah.
and that's, and so I kind of tell them like, hey, here's a quick video of how you do it. If you want a lot more nitty gritty details, check out Travis's video. And so it is definitely one of those I think I appreciate about your channel is it does get into so much of that learning, and you do things differently too. You know, you like to. I mean, I'm looking over here at your 5-gallon setup, and you know you've got these little under cabinet lighting that you've used for it.
Yeah.
And you know, if you go on forums or you go on Facebook groups, people tell you, oh, you can't grow plants with these lights. They're not going to be nearly enough light to grow plants, and you know, don't even try. It's not worth doing these on. And then you come over here to Travis' house, you're like, oh, look, you're growing plants with this under cabinet light, and that's I can get 4 lights for, you know,
Yeah.
$20 instead of spending $20 on one light. And so
Yeah.
I appreciate that you do that as well. So yeah, I'm sure like you probably watch a lot of different channels, but not as many as you used to. I know I don't watch as many as I used to. Too busy making videos myself.
Yeah.
But okay, all right. So I can appreciate that, and I agree. Corey's is definitely, you know, one of those YouTubers that I think everybody starting the hobby probably
Yeah.
comes across his videos and just finds them helpful.
Yeah.
So
And then there was actually, you were talking about entertainment channels, and there's actually one channel I like watching. He's a little, I say he's a smaller channel. He's got more subscribers than I do. But he was actually out here once and he filmed my fish room, and that is Michael Terrell from Off the Deep End Aquatics.
yeah,
And if you want to see some real, like, big tanks
He's got
that
some
he
huge,
built,
yeah.
he's got the 1,100 gallon tank that he built. He's got the 1,500 gallon tank that he built, and he is a true monster fish keeper. So he's got all kinds of big fish. He's got big stingrays. He's got big arowana, big catfish, like all kinds of cool stuff. So if you like being entertained by just watching somebody do something that you just aren't capable of doing, you don't have the room for, Mike is definitely one of those guys that, like, just watching his stuff is just cool.
yeah,
You know what I call that? A petting zoo.
Yeah.
yeah. Depending on what kind of fish it is.
Yeah, and he has to get in his tanks to clean them, so it's not like, oh, I just take an algae scraper and squeegee the edge of the glass. Like, no, he has to get in it with like a snorkel and scrub the tanks. And it's a whole big thing. It's cool to watch.
So we had a question. Can you
Yeah.
recommend a fancy goldfish channel? And so there used to be one.
Solid gold.
Solid Gold was the answer for goldfish.
Yeah, if you want a goldfish.
Except she doesn't do them anymore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, she had some issues, and she ended up losing all of her fish, and she got really depressed and got out of YouTube for quite a while. Then she came back for a little bit, and then she basically gave it up again.
yeah. So yeah, Solid Gold, and I don't. It's not called that anymore. I'm sure if you looked up Solid Gold Aquatics, you'll still probably find some of her videos. because they probably are still the best out there as far as
as far as
goldfish
information
care,
and
information.
breeding and all that
After a
stuff.
couple months, I believe they get rid of your channel if you want.
No, she still has it, and the videos are still out there. So you can definitely check out that channel. That would be, outside of her, I don't know that there's anybody who's really done a lot of, and you may know better, you're more into goldfish than I am, but that's the only one I know of.
Yeah, we don't.
Yeah, I don't. She's the only channel that I know of that was specifically goldfish, and that's what she did. I don't think most other channels out there, like even mine, like I teach a lot about goldfish because they're like one of my all-time favorite fish, and I know a lot about them, but I do other things too. So if you want something that's just specifically goldfish, I would say check out Solid Gold Aquatics. I don't know if that's still the name of her channel or not, but I think her profile picture is still the same. She's got black and gold hair split right down the middle.
Yeah, he
So-
said I did see. He said that he has seen those videos, but you're right. It's hard to find good channels on goldfish.
Mhm.
And I think in all honesty, I think a lot of times when you're getting into specific fish, a lot of times it's hard to find good information, and that's because one thing is go across the country or wherever, go across the world, and everybody has different water parameters, and fish act different in different water parameters.
Yeah.
And so you can get some basic information on fish, absolutely, but you'll see like people with very, very different water are keeping the same fish.
Yeah.
And how does that work? Well, because those fish were bred in that water, or they've been, adapted to that, and especially when you get into 2 or 3 generations down the line, fish can do quite a bit of adapting. So yeah, that's definitely.
Yeah, and the other thing too that's hard is if you do a channel specifically on one fish, there's only so much information you can provide for that one fish before you run out of content. So it makes it hard because like if Tim was to do a channel just on guppies, like how many videos would you have? Like 7, 8?
Well, Michael's Fish Room does a whole
Yeah.
channel, and he's got 800 plus videos.
Yeah.
But you're right, a lot of his videos are repeats.
Yeah, there's a lot of repeat
And I
videos.
think a lot of guys that do those kind of
Yeah.
channels are repeated videos over and over again.
Yeah.
Which in some cases
It's not
works. 'Cause-
necessarily a bad thing because if you learn new information and have new information, you can provide it.
yeah.
And update your video. And another thing too, like with YouTube specifically, if you have an older video that's not drawing the amount of traffic you want, if you re-upload a new video of it, you start getting that traction again.
Yeah.
But it's with your newer video, not your old one, so it helps. I've done a couple, but I don't like doing that because I don't know. It's just me, but I feel like when I do a video, it's just I did it right the first time. So I don't really think I want to go back and redo it. Like there's some videos that I've filmed 4 or 5 times before I even upload it.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
that's
yeah.
the worst. And I find that when I'm doing videos, a lot of times I said a line, nope, that wasn't the way I wanted to say that.
Yep,
Let me say that
stop,
line
delete,
again.
start over.
And start over again. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's but yeah, so good luck. If anybody else has any ideas for good goldfish channels, make sure you leave some comments there below. I'm sure between everybody here we'll probably come up with something else, but that's definitely the only one I can think of off the top of my head.
How did I get in the hobby? So actually, I talked about that earlier in the live stream. So if you go back to the beginning and watch a little bit of the beginning, I think that was like one of the first questions.
It was
I asked.
the first question we had. So when this comes back
it's
up,
definitely in there. So basically, when the live stream ends, it's going to just repost to my channel, probably in like an hour or 2, because it just has to buffer everything and reload. But it's going to upload to the channel, so you'll be able to go back and watch that. But yeah.
that's a question for you.
Anything about wind growth, cotton fungus, or just wind growth? So I think with that question, you're probably talking about the little white spots that you see on wind growth every once in a while. And that is just normal wind growth. It's just new, I guess it would be skin, because it's not scales. It's just new skin development for them. And it just looks white. I know a lot of people freak out about it, and they're like, oh no, my goldfish has a bacterial infection or a fungal infection on its head, and all the meds, right? And they throw all the meds in there, and it's just not needed. If it's a fungal growth, it's gonna get real big and real nasty and fluffy looking, And if it's a bacterial growth, it's going to be white and red and look. The fish is going to be pretty much laying on the bottom, because it's going to be hurt and it's going to be sore. So if you see little white spots on just the wen of the fish, that's just normal wen growth. If you're seeing it over the rest of the body of the fish, you're probably looking at like ick, could be bacterial infection spreading, something like that. And if you're seeing little white spots on the gill plates and pectoral fins, those are breeding tubercles or breeding stars, which is going to be only on the male fish during breeding seasons in the early spring and late fall, when your temperature comes up and drops back down again, is when they breed, because they're seasonal breeders. But I hope that answered that question for you.
I was going to say, now with the wen on goldfish, because they'll continue to grow, and don't sometimes you run into issues with them growing too big and start getting into their vision? Because I know people
the wen growth can actually grow. So the wen of a goldfish, depending on genetics, can actually start below their eyes, and it'll actually grow out over their eyes and then seal their eyes off, and then you have to basically do surgery on it to cut it out so that they can see again. And a wen is basically just fatty deposits. So if you want to grow a wen very well, you need to start when the fish is young, and you need to feed a high fat, high protein diet to get that wen growing up real big. But a lot of it has to do with genetics too. If you get a good genetic line, it'll start off with a big wen. But generally speaking, if you want to feed high fat, high protein, the thing with fancy goldfish is they don't like high fat, high protein foods, because it causes severe constipation and can end up leading to swim bladder disorders. So, and it's all in the world of having fancy goldfish. It's all the struggles we have to deal with, which is one of the reasons that I put live plants in my goldfish tanks, so that they have access to vegetation at all times. That's going to help keep their constipation at a very minimum, if not a non-issue. So that way they can eat on the plants, because they need a lot of vegetation in their diet to compensate the protein that is found in a lot of commercial fish foods.
So let's go with that, because somebody asked before we started live streaming, they were asking about plants in goldfish tanks. Now, a lot of times people really struggle with plants in goldfish tanks because goldfish tend to eat the plants. And so the question was, do you have any recommendation for any plants specifically that you can keep in a goldfish tank? And I'm amazed at your tank, because you do have some crazy plant growth in your tank.
Yeah, so I actually had, when the goldfish were out in my 125 gallon, and I think if you go back to the very beginning of my channel, you might actually be able to see those plants. But it was a fully planted 125 with goldfish, and I always got the question, how do you do that? And the easiest answer is overfeed them and do lots of water changes. Because the more food you keep in your fish's stomach, the less interested they're going to be in your plants. But it becomes very tedious. So if that's something you want to do, if you want a fully planted goldfish aquarium, I would suggest keeping one aquarium, because it's going to take up a lot of your time. And that's what I did. At the time, I only had the 125. So plants that I recommend, I had jungle val, I had Amazon swords, I had all kinds of anubias, I had crypts. Right now I have Java moss, I have some wassertang. Trying to think of any other ones that might go well in there.
Yeah, the Java moss you have in your goldfish tank, and you guys will see this in that video that come out. But it is absolutely insane to me how much. I don't think I've ever seen a tank with that much.
Yeah. So when I put it in there, it wasn't that big, and it was a full 5-gallon bucket. And it's probably a 5-gallon bucket and a half right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot in there. But those are definitely some good starting spots if you're looking for plants for a goldfish aquarium. They can stand up to the abuse, or they grow fast enough that it really isn't an issue if they munch on it a little bit, because the plant's going to grow faster than the goldfish can consume it. Another one would be anacharis. I love anacharis. Some places call it Elodia. But they like to munch on those little leaves and eat those, but it grows so fast that they'll never be able to eat the whole plant. So those are the ones that I would recommend that you go with. They can kind of handle the abuse that the fish are going to put on them.
Doesn't that mean that you're going to have to
Trim the
that
plants?
plant?
Yeah, if they grow fast enough, absolutely. Another one that some people recommend is Critum.
Oh yeah,
I've seen
Crinum
that.
callistratum, that's a good
I've
one.
got some Crinum callistratum. Not goldfish, but I got
Pogo
that.
stemon might work pretty good too, as long as it's big enough.
Yeah.
If you get a small one in there, it's probably not going to stand up. But if you get a big one in there, Pogo stem would probably hold up too.
Yeah, and if it's not, it'll probably grow.
Yeah.
You know, once you get that established, it grows
It
pretty
grows
fast.
pretty quick.
So you might be able to get away with that.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, thanks for the super chat. Wasn't expecting any of those.
Oh man,
Yeah.
that was awesome.
That's cool. Thank you.
Is that your first super
Yeah,
chat
that's
ever?
the first one I ever got.
All
That's
right.
cool.
I can't read the name there.
Spandog.
Span Dog.
Very much appreciated.
First super
man.
chat ever. That's awesome. No, good stuff. So okay, you know we've been going for almost an hour, so maybe just one more question for you.
Yeah.
And this is a question that you see all the time, but I still think it's one that's worth talking about. If there's a fish in the hobby that you just wish they would get rid of, get out of the hobby, you know, whether that's because, you know, we're talking about goldfish, that's one that a lot of people might mention because they are a much more difficult fish to take care of. They're often abused. But is there a fish in the hobby that you would say, you know what, I don't think it belongs in the hobby? You might love the fish, but it may not belong in the hobby.
There's actually a couple, and they're more geared to people who have specific size aquariums. So I've got a couple, so I'll just list them all. The number one for me is the common Pleco. Most people go to the store and they go, oh, I need an algae eater, give me a Pleco. And you get a common Pleco, and those guys get 2 feet long, and then once they start getting too big, people in warmer climates will go, you know what, it's a tropical water fish, it's a warmer climate, I'm just going to release it into the wild because it's going to have a better chance there. And if you go down and look at videos in Florida, they are absolutely rampant.
Yeah, they're crazy.
With these common plecos in their water
Yeah,
systems.
you'll see schools of
And
like hundreds of
them. And they're just destroying the ecosystems out there. And it's just, I don't think it's a good fish to be in the hobby. Now, mind you, you got bristlenose plecos, like zebra plecos, like all the smaller ones, clown plecos. Those are fine. Those will do great in any size aquarium, you know, 20 gallons up.
You have a bristlenose and it grows to like this size
Yep.
max.
Yeah, they get like 6 inches max. So, you know, that's much easier for somebody to take and have it for the whole life of the fish and not have to rehome it or like, try to put it back in the wild, which, if you don't know, is highly illegal pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, so like even my native fish that I have now, I source these myself. I caught them, brought them in, put them in the aquarium, but there's special regulations you have to follow, and you actually have to keep a valid fishing license in order to have them, because it is a fish that was caught and put in your possession. So there's certain things that you have to follow with these fish too. So I could never return them because they've been kept in a captive environment. You don't want to go releasing any pathogens that you may have introduced to these fish back out. I don't know why they keep dying. Back out into the wild.
Yeah.
So yeah, you definitely don't want to do that. So common Pleco is my number one. Number two is going to be Redtail Catfish. I love Redtail Catfish. I think they're awesome. But if you don't have a 400-gallon tank, don't buy one because they get absolutely huge.
Yeah.
Even 400-gallon, that's starting size.
Yeah,
that's starting
probably,
size.
Probably
That's not
bigger than that.
because I think the world record is 55 inches for a Redtail cat. They get huge. They can get up to like 100 pounds. They're massive. One of my buddies over on Aquatic Guru, that's Dustin, on his fish tank channel, he had, back in the beginning, he had a 600-gallon pond, and he had Thor, Loki, and I don't remember the other one's name. He had 3 of them, and they all got too big for that. He had to try and upsize it. He wasn't able to upsize. He had a living condition issue, and he actually had to rehome them. But even the 600-gallon pond that he had was getting too small. But yeah, that's another fish I don't think. Any of the big fish, like if you don't know, like I don't even know why Arapaima are in the hobby.
Oh no, they're insane.
Like Arapaima, they get 12 feet long. If you guys go check out, what the heck is that fish tube channel that's down in Florida? They've got like a 12,000 gallon predatory fins. If you check out predatory fins, they have a tank down there with arapaima in it. The things are massive. They're bigger than a
I was gonna
person.
say, even 12,000 gallons to me probably
Yeah.
feels tight for that fish. I
Yeah.
mean, that's those things. Yeah, if you haven't seen one, go to an aquarium. If you have an aquarium near you, you know, it has freshwater fish, go to one. Check out how big those fish get. Because you're right, that is one. It's probably the biggest fish that's in the hobby and shouldn't be anywhere.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of fish, because I agree. I think a lot of the monster fish are probably the biggest issue in the hobby. You know, as far as people being able to keep them, because you know you'll get one and redtail catfish when it's 2 inches long when you can
Yeah.
buy them. Oh, that's cute. That's cool looking. It's really got some
Yeah.
nice color. You get a new fish keeper in there, doesn't know what that fish is going
Yeah,
to be.
and then the
And it's
redtail
just- yeah.
catfish, most of the time you see them at your local fish store, they've got them in like a 20-gallon tank. My local store has them every once in a while. And it's like a little 5-inch redtail cat. They look super cool.
Yeah.
They look awesome, the black and white with the red tail. And they're like $7, so people are like, wow, that's cheap. You know, and it's catfish, they're gonna look super awesome. And then you get home, you put it in your 55-gallon tank, and then a month from now, the thing's 15 inches long.
Yeah, and you're ready to
And you're trying to find something
figure
to
out
do
what's
with it.
Yeah, I think it's one of those, and with any of those fish, I'll be honest, like, should they be out of the hobby completely? Probably not, but they probably should all be special ordered.
Yeah.
You know, it's probably one of those, you should probably be able to go to your fish store and say, hey, I want a redtail cat. Because if you've done the homework and you know what it is, then you have an idea. I mean, if you're coming in and asking specifically for a fish,
Yeah.
you already have an idea a little bit about that fish.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You could also check out Ohio Fish Rescue.
Yeah, they've got some huge fish.
Check out the videos on that. Pacu, that's another
that's
one.
another one.
Pacu. And Ohio Fish Rescue is the reason I even thought of that. There was a guy, he had a Pacu in a 125-gallon tank, and the Pacu was 28 inches long.
Yeah,
It
couldn't
had
turn
to,
around.
yeah, it had to swim vertically and then flip upside down and then rotate to turn around in the tank.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. But like a lot of those big fish, your average fish store should not sell.
Yeah.
Not that they shouldn't be in the hobby, they shouldn't sell them because most people walk in and they don't understand what they're buying. Even now, most people go to a fish store and they look at like, we'll just use a red devil because I have them here. Like, oh, give me a red devil because they're this big when you buy them and they're like $12. You
Yeah.
know, and people are like, oh, that's gonna look really cool in my 20-gallon. Well, you need at least a 75-gallon aquarium to properly take care
Yeah,
of the fish.
it'll look really cool in your 20 gallon for about 3 or 4 months. And then-
Yeah, and then it's going to be this big, and then you're not going to know what to do with it.
yeah.
You know, Oscars are kind of another one where people buy Oscars and they're like, "Wow, this looks really cool." Throw it in my tropical community, and then it kills everyone.
Oscar fish are funny to me because I think Oscar fish are really cool when they're little,
Yeah.
and I think they're really ugly when they get
Yeah.
big. So I've
And
never been in.
I had one. I actually had two. I had them in a 56-gallon aquarium. I had Bonnie and Clyde, and there was an albino and a regular tiger Oscar. And I gave my dad the one tiger Oscar, and I kept the albino. And she grew up to about 15, 16 inches.
Yeah.
And like even that, I moved her into my 125, and she lived in there for 5-6 years. And even that, it was so big, I couldn't put anything in there with her. And then it was funny because anything I put in there, she would kill. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to start getting feeder fish, which that's another thing I don't think should be in the hobby.
Yeah, no,
But I'll get into that.
That's
but,
a whole different issue, but yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
I started getting her what were they? Fathead minnows, which are basically the rosy reds, they call them
Yeah.
at the local fish stores. So rosy reds are the commercial fish food for hobbyists. But if you don't know, they are a fathead minnow, which is what is used for people who are into fishing and angling. So they're the same exact fish, one's just a golden variety. And so I went down to my local store and I was getting fathead minnows, and I put a bunch of fathead minnows in there for her to eat. That way I could provide her a better diet. And for whatever reason, she wouldn't eat those. She would eat every other fish that I bought that was like $4 or $5 a piece. And
But not the
fish
cheap
that
ones.
were like 10 cents a piece, she wouldn't touch them. So they lived in there with her for years,
Go figure.
you know. But yeah, like another one, feeder fish. The feeder goldfish, I don't think they should be sold as feeder fish because they are not a good diet. They're riddled with disease.
Yeah.
You're going to spend more money trying to make your feeder fish healthy to give your healthy fish already than it's worth spending the money on for.
So that kind of brings me to another question here. Somebody asked. David said, hey Travis, what is your go-to fish medication?
So there's a couple different medications I have on hand. Now, I know a lot of my viewers are in different countries, not just the United States. So fish medications are very hard to come by in other countries. But because I live in the United States, my go-tos are for fungal and bacterial infections, I go with erythromycin. It's worked hands down for me every single time. Never had an issue with it. My go-to anti-parasitic medication is going to be General Cure, which is metronidazole and praziquantel. That works very well for parasitic. The only parasitic that I use anything else for is ick, and I use Hikari IckX. That works pretty good. And that also works really good for minor fungal infections and bacterial infections. So if it's something minor, you can use IckX for that. But most ick treatments are going to be a combination of methylene blue and malachite green. So most ick treatments will work for that stuff too. But I only really use that medication if I absolutely have to. 90% of the ailments that your fish have can be fixed with water changes. Fresh water in an aquarium will help heal a bacterial infection. It'll help heal a fungal infection. If not, my next step is to use aquarium salt. Aquarium salt will fix 99% of those problems that the 90% didn't already fix. And everybody has access to aquarium salt.
Yeah, and I think in all honesty, you mentioned we're in the United States, so we have access to that. I don't think it's going to last much longer.
No, there's actually bills out right now trying to get all that stuff banned.
So I think we're all going to be doing more aquarium salt for fish. But a lot of people don't realize like ick. Ick is in every body of water.
Yep.
Every fish tank you have has ick in it, and you think, oh no, I medicated it, I got rid of the ick. No, you didn't. It's still there. So the question isn't what's there and what's not there. It's how much exposure do they have to it, and how healthy are they?
Yep.
It's kind of the same thing. We're walking around, especially right now. There's a pandemic worldwide, right? Well, how come some people get sick very easily, and other people were exposed to it for years before they got sick?
It's all based off the immunity that you or your fish have.
It's the immunity. It's how much of the exposure happens. And so, when we talk about fish, when we talk about these different diseases they have, parasites, that's another one.
Mm-hmm.
Most fish, even if you've done your work of trying to get parasites out of your system, they still have parasites in that system. There's no way to completely remove all of those things.
Yeah.
Keeping things sterile is just, it's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I agree. The biggest thing to keeping healthy fish is do some water changes, keep your water quality good. And you may not have to do it with water changes. There's other ways to keep high quality water. But that is, make sure your water quality is good. And then if nothing else works and you don't have any other options, salt is always going to be a good option for you. Now, I will say with salt, you do need to be careful with certain fish.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing with these medications. And usually it's those scale-ish fish.
Yeah.
So things like cory cats, that's a big one, right? That people keep that. They're considered scaleless. Now they have scales, but they're considered scaleless.
Yeah.
Those fish do tend to be a little bit more sensitive to some of those treatment
Clown
methods
loaches. Loaches are a big one. Dojo loaches, weather loaches.
Yeah.
People recommend doing half treatments, but that's the thing I always like. If you do a half treatment of medication, it's not working.
Yeah.
Right? Because you have to have a certain amount of the medication in the water to effectively heal or treat whatever you're trying to. And if you're doing half treatments, all you're doing is giving the bacteria or infection the chance to fight against the medication and become resistant to it. So that's something that I'm always very lenient on what I keep, because I don't want to do half treatments.
Yeah. And I agree with you with the medication. I do think with the salt you can get away with the half.
Salt, I think you can, because you're bringing it up to a certain salinity.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take a lot of salt to fix stuff.
It doesn't take a lot of salt.
And fish are very tolerant.
Right, and you're not going to build up there's a reason salt still works in the hobby. It's because things don't build up the resistance to salt the way they do medications.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's part of the reason I'm okay with using a half dose when you're doing salt.
Yeah.
But not.
Yeah,
not
salt, I would say, I would agree with you. Salt is okay. Medications, it's not a good idea to use medication in a half treatment because it gives the ability of the pathogen to build up resistance to it. And we have a lot of that in the hobby. Over the past few years, we've had a lot of ick medications.
Yeah.
what was it, Ick Super Cure? They used to sell it at Walmart. That was like the #1 go-to probably like 10 years ago as a Super Ick Cure. And then Jungle had one that was really good too, and now they basically don't work anymore.
No.
Ick X is one that pretty much works all the time now, but 10 years from now, it
Yeah,
may
who
not.
knows? Right.
You know? So, but yeah, that's my thoughts on it.
And then people love to get another one. And
Yeah, I keep coming on new stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we end our live stream here?
I don't think so. Did we want to go through? Oh, keep it tight. Did we want to go through the comments and try and answer anything that we might have missed?
Yeah. If you guys have questions, why don't you throw them
Yes.
down there right now? I know we answered a few of them as we went along the way, but if there's any other questions that we might have missed, repeat them. It'll be easier than us trying to probably scroll through them.
Yeah.
But I think we got most of the questions. Talked about wind growth. I don't see anything around looking here real quick. But if there are any questions, let's just see.
Yeah, if we missed your question, go ahead and type it again, drop it in there, and we'll answer it. We'll hang out for a little bit, answer some questions.
Did we miss any other questions?
I feel like you missed a question.
Which one?
What question was that?
So, Travis refuses to put any videos up of our homestead, but people are showing interest in the comments when I'm talking about it. Because you've been building, like, the chicken coop, the duck coop, the koi ponds you built, the aquaponics itself that you built. So if you want to start off with the aquaponics with the kois and everything and how the goldfish help us grow our own food, people are saying they want to see that. And I want to see a series starting in the spring, if I have to move you off the couch and do that. Because, like, I think that'd be cool. I watch the homestead videos all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if that's something you guys want to see, I could definitely do it. I mean, the channel,
watch it.
yeah, the channel's kind of been based off fish the entire time, so I could understand personally adding in the aquaponics because that is basically mixing fish back with nature and creating a stable ecosystem out of it. As far as the chickens and ducks, I could add that in as little bits and pieces here and there. So if that's something you guys would be interested in seeing, just go ahead and let me know. And
I almost think
Make it
that if you're going to do homesteading, that probably just a whole separate channel would be.
I actually have.
Would be a good way to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, and now I know how much work it is to do one channel.
Yeah,
So-
I actually have a
so
second
you
channel
know.
already made because I was gonna do that. But yeah, Fritz is good product too for medication. So basically, what's happening was all of the medications that basically I think Corey was using, he got with was it Flipaqua? No,
What do you
who was advertising the Fritz? Who was the?
Oh, I don't remember who was with Fritz before. I know Corey was doing API before, and then had all kinds of
Yeah.
issues with getting stock
Yeah,
and that
and
kind
then
of thing.
the Fritz, they basically took all those medications that these people were having a hard time getting it and rebranding it. So like Fritz Marison is just erythromycin.
Yeah.
Like it's the same thing. But I agree, Fritz, all of their products work. They're all good products because it's all just rebrands of the products that we already use.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. That's good stuff.
Yeah, so Scott says he does know some channels that have both fish and animal homesteading, that kind of thing. And it might work out well for you. I just, like I said, you know, one of the things as YouTubers that we have to kind of think about is we want to keep our channel on a specific topic because people are coming to your channel to watch fish stuff. So
Yeah.
for Travis, like, he has, you know, I think it's something like 11,000 subscribers at this point. And there are probably a small part of them, oh man, you know, there's a lot of people who are coming there to see fish stuff. And probably 95% of his people that are watching his channel are going to be interested in only fish stuff. They're not really going to be interested in that.
And I
homesteading.
actually, I did a poll.
That's why you kind of debate
Yeah.
going back and forth.
So you know what's funny is I actually did a poll on that on my channel on if people wanted me to add the fish stuff in, or not the fish stuff, the homesteading stuff in,
Yeah.
or keep it separate. And I was actually surprised that 79% of the people wanted me to add it in.
Really?
You know,
That's-
but even
that's pretty
then,
impressive.
29% of the people don't.
Yeah.
So even though 70 or 79, 19, no, whatever it was like a 70-30 split, 70-30 split.
Yeah.
But 30% is still a big number that don't want it. So
Yeah,
I
still
would
over
be,
3,000 subscribers
yeah,
that you're
I would
kind
be
of.
risking losing that, and I don't know. It's one of those things. I might make a separate channel and just link it to this channel. The aquaponics stuff I can definitely include because that's still fish related, So it's just something I got to think about. Sit down, run the numbers.
And I can definitely see why people would want to see you do it
Yeah.
because you are so good at teaching how to do some stuff. So I'm sure like they would love to see some of the different homesteading things you're doing with your chickens and your ducks and that type of thing.
Yeah.
Your garden, absolutely.
Yeah. Izzy does it. I really, really appreciate that. Your video on fishing and cycling with Prime and Fritz helped me get through my setup 5 months ago. Saved my fish. Thanks, man. Well, thank you for the super chat. I'm glad that video helped you, and I'm glad that I was able to help you get through that time with your fish. Appreciate that.
Yeah, Mariah says she wants you to do the aquaponic stuff.
Yeah,
at least for
aquaponic
you.
stuff I can definitely do.
And I want you to do it too, because I want to see it. Now, I'm not necessarily going to be doing aquaponics. I rent,
Yeah.
so I don't have a place to do it. But I've been trying to push my dad to do a little more fish stuff.
Mhm.
And my mom he lives in a little apartment at this point. He still lives at his property's got about 3 acres, but he lives in an in-law apartment in the basement. My sister now owns the house.
Yeah.
And they do some gardening and stuff, and I keep trying to convince him, like, hey, get some more fish in here. But Mom doesn't want him in the house. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to convince him, hey, let's do a pond outside.
Yeah.
So if you could do aquaponics, and maybe I could convince him to
Yeah, you could
And there's
get the whole
actually
family
You
involved.
could get some mini trees and just.
yeah.
It would be
And
awesome.
there's actually ways to do aquaponics too that don't take up a lot of space. It's called barrel ponics. You can take one 55-gallon plastic barrel, cut the top third of it off, flip it over, and you have your fish down at the bottom, and you grow stuff out of the top. So it doesn't take up a lot of room. You just put it on your porch. But not everybody's into doing that. So, but yeah, that's something I can definitely do. I'll definitely do aquaponics. I was going to do it this last year, but I built the system halfway through the summer, so I didn't really have the time to show you guys start to finish. So this coming spring, I can definitely do that.
Yeah, Scott, I see you have 17 tanks in your condo, and I can understand that. I don't have that many tanks in my apartment, but I live in a pretty small apartment, and I think I have 8 or 9 tanks right now. I don't,
Yeah.
it's always varying. If you keep a lot of fish tanks, I think this is probably true for a lot of people, that your fish tank numbers are always varying. Well, it's because you get bigger tanks for different fish,
Yeah.
or because you're like, oh, I could add a few more small tanks here and there.
We have 7 on, right?
Oh, we have 7 up, so I guess we did just pull a couple down. And we got bigger tanks, and so we were able to get rid of some. But yeah, definitely, living in an apartment or condos or things like that is definitely different than having your own piece of
That's
property.
why we need a house so we can get like 100 fish tanks.
That's what I thought too. I got up to 30.
We can have a man cave.
Span Dog, I saw your question before about did I ever keep Pea Puffers? I did. We actually talked about that back earlier in the live chat. So once this uploads after here, you can go back, rewatch it, and then that'll be in there. I had 8 of them in a 29-gallon tank. Let's see, there's so many people abusing fish in the tiny aquaponics though. Yeah, so that's something definitely like I talked about the barrel ponics. I saw a couple YouTube videos where people were taking goldfish and putting like 20 goldfish in the bottom half of a 55-gallon barrel.
Oh, that's terrible.
Now, granted, space-wise, definitely not ideal, right? It's not good. But believe it or not, the water quality is actually there. Even my 1,000-gallon pond, when I had one little grow bed set up, there was absolutely no nitrate in it whatsoever. And that was actually kind of shocking. But I do agree the space requirement that you need for those fish is not there with that. So for something like that, if you're going to do it now, especially if you're doing it outside, you're growing these plants in the summer. So if you can get, and it's a smaller body of water too, you could always heat it, right? You could always put an aquarium heater in it. But you could do smaller fish. You got your zebra danios, they do pretty good outside. Guppies do good outside. Rice fish you can do. You can do, like I said, the rosy red minnows, you can do them outside. They even do good in cold weather. I actually have some outside right now in a pond with 2 inches of ice on it, and you can see them swimming around under the ice. So they do good cold weather. But yeah, there's a bunch of other fish. You don't have to use goldfish in aquaponics. Truly, aquaponics was developed so that you could actually harvest fish too. But I don't do that so much.
Yeah.
I'm more at looking at them. I want to
No,
see the
but-
koi swim around in the pond.
You're right, man. I mean, some people do like tilapia and
Yeah.
things like that.
Unfortunately, for here in Pennsylvania, you need a special permit to have tilapia. Now, you don't need it for female tilapia, but you need it for male tilapia. And how do you determine that when they're this big? You know, you can't. So if anybody ever shows up and wants to see your permit, you know, it's just a nightmare. But you could do like bluegills and things like that here. They do good and cold. If you wanted to do that, that's always an option too. Yeah, I think I rambled on enough about that.
Well, let's just see. Yeah, I think that's probably about it for questions. So I think we're probably ready to sign off, and we got some videos to make and
Yeah.
some stuff to do.
Yeah, so if you guys have any questions or anything that we didn't cover in the video, once this re-uploads, go ahead and drop them in the comments. I'll answer them there too. I pretty much answer every single comment I ever get, unless YouTube hides it for some reason. So, yeah, go ahead, drop a comment here. Any other video if you want, go over on Tim's channel this coming Friday. Check out the fish room tour. You guys will be able to see the new setup in the fish room here. Originally, I wanted to do the video where we were going to take the couch and flip it around so that we'd have the tanks behind us, but I don't want to ruin Tim's video, so we'll save that. So you guys can check that out there on
Yeah,
Friday.
maybe we'll do another live stream in the future. And
Yeah, we'll definitely do another live stream in the future. If you guys have any topics that you want us to talk about, you can leave comments on that too. We'll compile a list and we'll talk about it. That's all.
Ian,
Like,
Ian
you
has
guys
one
have the
question.
same length of
Beards are awesome.
Because you gotta have some length to your beard.
Yeah.
That's how you know you're thinking.
Yeah, beards are awesome.
yeah.
If you're not thinking,
How come you don't?
I used to. I pulled a hair off of theirs and just taped it to my
It's
chin.
true,
yeah.
And then I did this.
All right, bud. We're gonna get going. You want to say bye to everybody?
Goodbye.
Yep. All right, guys. So that's it for the live stream. Thank you guys for watching Fish Aquatics and Ian's Fish Room. We'll be back doing more live streams at some point. So you guys seem to have enjoyed it. So on the next one, make sure you share it out. Let's get some more people in here and have another conversation.
Yeah, but go visit my channel.
Yeah, visit Ian's channel too. All right. So thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, guys.
Now, if I can figure out how to stop it.
That